M3GAN is finally released into the movie theater, and for anybody that is interested in seeing this movie, we're going to be doing a full in-depth analysis on whether or not the movie is scary, and if it is scary, how scary is it? The way this analysis is going to work is that I'm going to create 4 separate brackets, and if the movie succeeds in all 4 of these brackets, then the movie proves itself worthy of being a scary enough film. The 4 brackets that the movie needs to pass is how much blood is in the movie, how many kills are in the film, how violent does the movie get, and how are the jump scares in the film, or are there any jump scares at all? The first bracket that we're going to be talking about is how much blood is in the movie. In order for the movie to succeed this bracket, we need to figure out how much blood is in the movie, how much gore is in here, and is there any kind of torture device or some amount of torture that these characters are going through that earns its spot within the horror genre. The amount of blood they're able to get away with for a PG-13 film is actually quite effective. It's not as hardcore as, say, Doctor Strange 2, but for what the director and editors had to work with, it managed to be intense enough to show how dark the movie can get. It doesn't show a ton of gore, though. There's probably only one scene that would have been close enough to getting some amount of gore, but it's not enough to say it really helps to push the limit of the PG-13 rating. Some of the torture in here is pretty satisfactory, again, only for what its rating is, though. Most of the suffering aspect can come from the traumatization some of our characters have metaphorically been through in terms of telling a story. As for torture in a physical sense, there are a few characters in here that do get some physical damage to them and are cleverly edited. And even though there isn't a lot because of its MPA rating, I think there's still enough damage scenes that warrant a satisfying enough rating for torture. So in terms of the rating system, I'm going to rate the blood section a 3 out of 5, the gore section a 1.5 out of 5, and the torture section a 3 out of 5. And when calculating all 3 of these sections, the bloody section has calculated itself up to being a 7.5 out of 15. The second bracket that we're going to be looking at is the amount of kills, or how are the kills in this movie. And in order for this bracket to succeed, we need to see if the movie earns its R rating, or if it should be rated R, or if it's fine as a PG-13 film. We also need to figure out how grotesque the deaths are in this film, and the last thing we need to understand is whether or not there are any traps or barely any room for the main characters to escape. There's a total amount of 5 kills that happen in the movie, and the moment they do happen for a PG-13 film, they play out satisfying enough. It's actually very smart to the point where having this movie set for the rating as it is just as satisfying, even though it could have been rated R. Mostly because the film is more so focused on the bond between the AI and the little girl, and because both of them are acting effectively throughout the runtime, the entertainment value is still just as satisfying because we're not so much focused on wanting mindless entertainment to be shown. The entertainment is fine the way it is. To be honest, grotesque value will go down, but not as much, only because the director and editor know how to cleverly bring in the pain, reveal a little of what happened, and cut away the exact moment when they need to. As for traps, they're very basic, but they can be quite effective when they need to be, and it mostly has to do with M3GAN using her technology abilities. Although I do feel like with some characters, they could have gotten away from her traps easily because they should be smart characters who know better, but I guess they did create a robot who can become sentient and have a mind on their own that went haywire, so maybe they're not as smart as I thought. As for the MPA rating, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. The grotesque rating, I'm going to say it's a 2 out of 5. And for the traps rating, I'm going to give it somewhat of a 2.5 out of 5. And when calculating all 3 of these sections, the kill section has led itself up to having an 8.5 out of 15 rating. Now it's time to move on to the third bracket, and that is how violent is this movie? Is there any personality within our main characters that embraces the violence within this movie? Do we have any of the antagonists or villains in the film who don't have any ambition to stop what it is that they're doing and complete their mission? And finally, we need to discuss the brutality in here. How dark does the movie go? What are the things that happen in this film that earns its title of being a violent movie? When looking at the violence, I'm not going to act like that this movie is insanely genius or beyond hardcore in all its brilliance, but in all honesty, all of the violence relies on the doll M3GAN. The personality, her ambition, how harsh she can be. M3GAN is smart, sadistic, and cruel when she doesn't get what she wants. She twists things around and becomes overpowered and takes advantage of it. She acts demon-possessed when she's out of control and runs, and becomes inhumane when she comes up with tactics to take down her enemies. She kills without any regret. She's also very strong. She becomes a bad influence on the daughter by making her almost as reckless and abusive as she is. If if we want to talk about violence outside of M3GAN, the other little girl has her moments of being hardcore as well. When the movie is reliant on these two, it can be violent when it wants to be. It's not as bombastic as other horror films, but it definitely has the spirit of it. So for all three of these sections, I'm gonna easily give this a solid 3.5 out of 5, only because it's not as hardcore as other films would have been, but for a PG-13 film, it definitely captures and embraces the beautiful spirit from the horror genre. And so when calculating all three of these brackets for the violence section, it adds itself up to a 10.5 out of 15. And the last bracket that we're going to be analyzing are the jump scares. Of course, we're going to be looking at how many jump scares there are in here. Do they linger on with traumatization? Are they just a quick scare just to tense you up for a minute? Are they just complete fake outs? Or are there any jump scares in the film at all? And once this bracket is done, we're going to be able to calculate every single one of these brackets all together to give out a calculated percentage on how scary this movie actually is. There's a total of 7 jump scares, a couple in the beginning, a few in the middle, and then a couple more in the end. In all honesty, all of the jump scares in here are not at all clever, unexpected, or scary. They're typical jump scares that you've seen a bunch of times in other generic horror movies. They're either fake outs or expected surprise attacks. If you want a clever jump scare, the worst thing you could do is pretend something will happen and then cop out by saying it's actually something else just so you can give the audience a quick jump scare. It's cheap, annoying, and it doesn't lead into anything fun. Other than the fake outs, the other expected scares, what happens afterwards, can be fun, but it in no way has anything to do or is in relation with the scare factor whatsoever. It mostly has to do with the kills and violence of the movie. So yeah, I say the jump scares are worthless in this movie, and it's going to get a 0 out of 5. So due to the fact that this movie has the hard energy and spirit of what an entertaining horror movie can be like, but still suffers through cliche jump scares and less gruesome killing sprees, all of these brackets have calculated the movie to be 53% scary. It's not really scary, but it does have the true spirit of a horror movie. So what did you guys think of the movie M3GAN? Did you find this movie to be scary, or did you find it to not be scary at all? Did you agree with this rating system, or do you think that this system needs to be updated a little bit? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below, and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.